Listen to a part of a conversation between a student and a college administrator.
Hi, how can I help you?
Oh, hi. I'm looking for the chemistry professor, Professor Dean. Is he around? Is this the floor where he works?
Yeah, this is the floor. He works down the hall, but, no, he's not in his office right now.
Oh, do you know when he'll be available?
Actually, he just left this morning for a vacation. If I remember right, he won't be back until, let's see. He won't be back until Sunday. Until then, he will be out of the state. Can what you need wait until then?
Oh no, I'm off on a trip all next week, and after that it might be too late. I'd really prefer to talk to him now rather than later. Do you know if he's still accepting interviews to be his teacher's assistant this semester?
You want to work for him?
Yes, if he's still looking for one, I'd like to interview for the position.
You know, Professor Dean is a pretty well-liked professor. I'm sure he's taken a lot of interviews already.
Yeah, the department head told me that might be the case. That's why I came as soon as I had time. I even pulled an all-nighter last night to prepare for the interview. I'm hoping he'll let me be his TA even though, well, there really are a lot of talented students at this school and I'm just a freshman. And you know, I'm going abroad next semester and I heard Dean might be retiring soon, so this could be my only chance.
Oh, wow, really? Most students wait at least a year to go abroad.
Yeah, well, there's this great art scholarship that lets people go to Germany, and somehow I got it, and I felt like that was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
You didn't plan ahead for being Professor Dean's TA?
Well, actually, I've admired his work for a while, since before I came to this college, but I only heard that he took undergraduate TAs, like, 3 days ago. And I would have come in sooner, but, you know, homework and classes and...
Well, maybe you could send an email to the professor asking for an interview the day he gets back and see if he says yes.
I mean, that would be a good idea, but Professor Dean is supposedly famous for not checking his emails very often. I mean, I could just wait outside his office on Sunday. At least there would be no way to miss him.
Now, I'm sure that'd be very uncomfortable for you, and you probably wouldn't make the best impression on him. I have an idea. I know that he has a work phone which he does check often, and I have the number. How about I call it and leave a message saying that someone wants an interview with him on Sunday?
Really? I'd really appreciate that. And, you know, after thinking about it, I'll send him an email too, just in case. I could just wait outside his office on Sunday. At least there would be no way to miss him.
Now, I'm sure that'd be very uncomfortable for you, and you probably wouldn't make the best impression on him. Now, I'm sure that'd be very uncomfortable for you.
Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
I hope you all have been keeping up on the recent journal articles about the Mariana Trench. We've been sending a lot of probes down there recently, some that are mapping out terrain from above, and others that are actually landing on the ocean floor. And they've been giving us lots of data that have given our scientists new insight into things we really wish we'd known earlier. Is there anything you found particularly interesting in all the articles?
A lot of them have been mentioning man-made pollution down there, which is really odd to me. I think of the Mariana Trench as being completely untouched.
A lot of people think the same way. You know, before the modern era, we didn't even know that the Mariana Trench existed, so obviously people didn't think about how they were affecting it. You know, for the Mariana Trench and other dark and mysterious places under the ocean, a lot of public perception back then was based on old sailors' tales. It was thought of being a vast wasteland with big, dangerous...
Oh, right. They thought there were sea monsters, huh? My parents told me those tales when I was younger. I mean, I can't believe it. Why would anyone...
Well, things always look silly when you're looking from the future, but those ideas were really all we had back then. Anyway, we started thinking about our impact on the Mariana Trench back in the 1960s, when we were first able to send probes that could hover above the trench. The data showed a pristine area where the only things around were a couple of organisms, though nothing that could be considered a sea monster. So yeah, this view of the Mariana Trench after this first probe was that untouched wilderness that Janice mentioned. But we continued to visit the Mariana Trench in the 1970s, and with the technology we developed, we were able to actually land on the seafloor, so we could take more detailed pictures of what was going on, and we discovered a few unfortunate facts. The trench contains a lot more man-made toxins than we thought, poison gases mostly. There were also signs of industrial waste, some of which looked like it had been down there for decades. So we concluded that humans were having a much bigger impact down there than we thought. Now, whose fault do you think it was?
Ship trade. Leaving pollutants and debris in the water.
That was one factor, and another was just everyday humans, people like you or me. Today, the oceans are full of garbage that have built up from centuries of litter. Notoriously, there's a huge garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean that measures twice the size of the United States. But before human interference, we can imagine a place that only had a few organisms, a little bit of volcanic gas, and nothing else that could affect the ecosystem. So maybe the Mariana Trench once wasn't just another victim of human negligence. Maybe at one point, it was an almost perfectly empty world, separate from everywhere else. Now, let's talk about the present day, when some of the most technologically advanced probes have been diving into the trench. And because of an increase of government support for pollution research, we've got not only sophisticated probes, but a lot of them as well. We've been getting all sorts of interesting data, and thankfully, the data is telling us a lot of good can be done for the trench. Janice, you mentioned that some of the journal articles mentioned pollution. Did any of them mention solutions?
Well, they were talking about how some industry was creating a sort of bacteria that could eat and digest the pollution, like oil. They said since we currently have bacteria like that, all we need to do is adapt them to be able to survive being deep underwater for a lot of time. But I didn't really understand all of that.
That's understandable. There's a lot of work, a lot of companies trying to get into pollution reduction. A lot of their solutions are kind of doubtful, but there are also some solutions that are being developed that are absolutely ingenious. If only we could send humans down there in a submarine, we could gather even better data. But that's impossible currently. Anyway, if pollution reduction methods continue to be developed, we might be able to make the Mariana Trench what it once was, something pristine, protected by the humans that once heard it. Maybe the Mariana Trench could be healthy once again.
A lot of them have been mentioning man-made pollution down there, which is really odd to me. I think of the Mariana Trench as being completely untouched. I think of the Mariana Trench as being completely untouched.
Listen to part of a lecture from an ecology class.
Hey everybody. Nice you all came to class today. I know it's a beautiful day outside, so you probably don't want to be in a lecture. It seems like the only time everyone shows up is when it's raining. So, I know I was supposed to announce the date of the final exam today, but, well, the university has asked us to wait to schedule our final exams, because there are only going to be a few exam rooms available, and they need to make sure that all the professors don't schedule their exams at the same time. So they're going to create some sort of centralized calendar for us to schedule the exams. Anyway, that should be ready soon, so I hope I can announce the date of the exam next week. Alright, so in the reading for today, you started learning about rivers and land. Specifically, you learned about river deltas, the areas of land that form at the mouths of rivers, where they flow into the ocean. Deltas are extremely important ecologically, and they are the home for many animals, including fish, birds, and small mammals. In this lecture, we're going to talk more about river deltas, and we'll begin with a famous and important delta, the Mekong Delta. You know, it's surprising, but a lot of people don't know where the Mekong Delta is. They don't even know what continent it's on. Well, the Mekong Delta is in Asia. It's actually located in the southern part of Vietnam. In fact, it makes up a sizable part of Vietnam's total area. The Mekong, in its name, refers to the Mekong River, which flows south from Yunnan province in China through Southeast Asia and eventually flowing into the ocean at, of course, the Mekong Delta. You know, compared to most other deltas, the Mekong Delta is huge. It is thousands of square miles in size, and massive amounts of water flow through it. It also has another feature that's ecologically very significant, and this is that it provides a great diversity of different habitats. And that mix of features, huge landmass, plenty of water, a diverse range of different ecological habitats, means the Mekong Delta is a great home for animals, particularly rodents and other small animals. As a matter of fact, in the last decade, over 1,000 new species of animals were discovered there. If that rate of discovery continues, then we can expect to discover hundreds more new species in the next few years in the Mekong Delta. Now, how is that? You see, it's actually not that easy for small animals to hide on land. If you've ever been hiking, you know that you sometimes see mice and squirrels running to hide somewhere. And that's because they're trying to find some protection from being hunted by larger animals. So, if you're a small animal in the wild, staying safe can be pretty difficult, especially in a heavily populated region like Asia. It can be really hard for a small animal to find safe and reliable shelter. So these animals are constantly on the run, and at the same time, they are competing with one another for food and water, in addition to shelter. So often these animals end up going extinct, unfortunately. Contrast that with life in the Mekong Delta. If you're a small animal in the Mekong Delta, you can find some area that is completely hidden from larger animals. If you need some food to eat, it's right there for you, because you're surrounded by seeds and insects. Alright, so maybe a small animal could live undiscovered in the Mekong Delta like this, but has this actually happened? Are there actually animals living there that we don't know about? Well, it turns out there's been at least one case. The miniature rock rat is a tiny gray rat with a black tail. It lives in small limestone caves along the Mekong Delta, and it eats mainly leaves and seeds. This rat was discovered only in 1996, when a local villager captured it. Well, it turns out that it belongs to a family of rodents that we thought had been extinct for over 11 million years. And this rat had just been living in the Mekong Delta, minding its own business, and we thought it was completely extinct. And for all we know, there might be lots of other animals like that. Because it is so large and provides so many different habitats for so many different possible kinds of animals, we can't really say what kind of animals might be hiding somewhere in the Mekong Delta. What we do know is that as long as that ecosystem exists, it will sustain and protect a remarkable variety of animals.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a clerk at the campus bookstore.
Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for the textbook for Professor Clark's biology class, but I can't seem to find it. Could you tell me where the textbook is? First Principles of Biology? Do you have it?
Well, there's a listing of all the textbooks we have in stock on the sign at the front of the store.
Sure, I saw that, but this textbook isn't on that list. There must have been an oversight or something like that. Could you look up the book for me?
All right, let's look in the computer system. It's biology, yeah? Hold on, did you say First Principles of Biology?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry, but according to this, the professor won't be using that textbook. You should have gotten an email from us about this.
Really? I didn't get an email.
Are you sure? Because it says here in the system that the email was sent out to students on Monday.
Is that right? I should have seen it by now. I wonder if I accidentally deleted it or something like that.
Sure, that happens sometimes. Let me look at something else. What's your name?
Watson. Ashley Watson.
Let's see, Watson. Okay. It says we emailed it on Monday to, your official student email account.
Oh, I never use that account. I use my personal email address for everything.
I see, and I guess we don't have your personal email address in our system, so that's why you didn't get it.
Yep, I guess so. But how can the professor decide not to use a textbook right before the semester starts? What about students who have already bought it?
I know, it's really annoying for them. It's too bad, but, it's up to the professor if he wants to use a textbook, and he can change it if he needs to. You know, it's important that the professor be able to have the readings that are right for his course, and if he changes the course content, he has to change the readings, you know?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, what textbook should I buy instead?
Okay, let's look. So this is Professor Clark's biology class. Oh, it looks like he's not going to use a textbook at all. He will just be distributing a course reader to students.
Oh, a course reader. Okay. I just hope I can figure out where to get that. Will he be handing them out in class, or do I get it somewhere else?
Well, it depends on the professor, but for Professor Clark, you should, let's have a look. Normally they would have it at the student center, but since he just assigned it, they wouldn't have it there yet. You know what you should do, though? Send Professor Clark an email about this. He'll be able to let you know if he'll be distributing the course reader in class or if you have to get it at the student center. It's up to him, really.
Oh, all right. I can do that. Thanks for the help.
Not a problem. Sorry about the confusion. Oh, why don't I update your email address with us? It will just take a second.
Oh, okay. Let's do that right now.
Listen to part of a lecture in a zoology class.
So far, we've been talking about mammals that generally hunt their food, and that depend on smaller animals, prey, carnivores. But today I want to talk about mammals that are herbivores, that only have plants in their diets. Now, some of these animals survive by traveling long distances and eating a great variety of plants. Like rabbits have an incredibly varied diet. But what about mammals that are herbivores that can't find such a wide variety of plants? How do they manage to survive? I'm going to use the koala as an example. So, you know the koalas are really cute to look at. But maybe the most amazing thing about the koala is that it mainly eats only one kind of food. The eucalyptus tree, its leaves. Lots and lots of these leaves, which are its main food during every part of the year. Even in the winter when fewer of these leaves are available, it doesn't try to find something else to eat. So we would say the koala is a herbivore, a plant eater, since these eucalyptus leaves, which are parts of plants, these are pretty much all it eats, you see? Now, in fact, the average koala tends to eat, think about this, over 10,000 leaves a day. So you might say, incredible, it must be full, have lots of energy, yeah? Actually, it doesn't. A koala usually sleeps up to 20 hours a day, leaving only 4 hours for moving around, despite eating all those leaves. It's just that eucalyptus leaves don't have many calories in them, even when you eat a lot of them. So the koala just doesn't get much energy from its diet. And the koala really depends on the eucalyptus tree. And it should be clear that the reverse is also the case. The eucalyptus depends on the koala to carry its seeds to new areas, and also to strip off unhealthy bark from trees. So if there were no koalas, there probably wouldn't be any eucalyptus trees either. But there's a problem. Since koalas depend entirely on one kind of tree for their food, as well as for their shelter and breeding sites, they are threatened if there's any kind of problem for that kind of tree. In fact, there are many threats to eucalyptus trees, including natural threats like destructive insects and other pests. And any threat to the eucalyptus tree is a danger to the koala as well. So, to protect the koala, we need to protect the eucalyptus tree. And one of the primary ways people are doing this is by planting new eucalyptus forests. In areas that used to be desert, they're irrigating the land so that eucalyptus trees can grow there. Developing plant medicine is another method for helping to save those trees. As tree diseases, sicknesses like the flu, but which affect trees rather than people, the more we manage to eliminate or treat these diseases, the safer eucalyptus trees will be. And safe and healthy trees result in more koalas. That's one more reason why research into tree disease is such an important area of scientific study, yes? But to really protect koalas for the long term, we need to explore different options, and we need to think about introducing new plants for koalas to diet, feed on, and use for shelter too. Plants that could really take the place of eucalyptus trees if necessary. That would be a real solution to the risks that koalas face. An interesting strategy, a promising way of supporting koalas, is by introducing myrtle into their diet. Myrtle trees are closely related to eucalyptus trees, but they are in fact much easier to grow. So, it turns out, some zoologists have recently tried raising koalas entirely on a diet of myrtle. What they did was to take some adult koalas and make sure that they were in good health, check to see they weren't sick, that they were a normal weight, and they were eating a typical koala diet, a diet of leaves, of eucalyptus leaves. Then they slowly replaced a small percentage of eucalyptus leaves in their diet with myrtle leaves. Well, technically they're not leaves. Actually, they're a kind of flower. Anyway, the koalas didn't seem to notice. In fact, some koalas ate a diet of mostly myrtle and showed no health problems at all. Some koalas even had more energy on the new diet. Oh, and if any koalas got sick during the study, there was a veterinarian available to treat them, but he was never needed. So studies like this one give us new information about the koala and its way of life, what it likes to eat, and what nutrients it has to have, its necessary nutrients. They're now trying to see if a koala can be raised entirely on myrtle from birth. That koala might never even see a eucalyptus tree. Another promising line of research is to produce artificial plants that contain all of the nutritional elements of the eucalyptus, but don't actually need to be grown in nature. So developments like these are of great interest to people who are interested in protecting animals against threats to the plants that they depend on in their native habitats. These dietary innovations might help us to protect vulnerable animals like koalas. But to really protect koalas for the long term, we need to explore different options, and we need to think about introducing new plants for koalas to diet, feed on, and use for shelter too. Plants that could really take the place of eucalyptus trees if necessary. That would be a real solution to the risks that koalas face.
Listen to a part of a lecture in an environmental science class. The professor has been talking about national parks.
We've been looking at the U.S. national parks, places that the government is trying to preserve. We've seen that some parks go back a few hundred years, like several hot springs in the state of Arkansas, still in existence today, and how others, through the works of certain imaginative writers, have even had myths attached to them, such as Olympic National Park, where the mythical creature Bigfoot is said to roam. Now, any government can just say, let's preserve this land. It doesn't cost anything to say something. But if the government is going to follow through, we must ask what national parks produce for people and society in order to understand why a government with finite funds, would decide to put money towards something that doesn't contribute anything in an obvious way. Let's start by looking at Yellowstone National Park. A lot of you probably have seen photographs of Yellowstone, even if you didn't recognize it. Yellowstone is a national park that sprawls over 3 states, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Imagine the amount of cooperation between these states necessary to keep Yellowstone preserved. And now think, the federal money that had to be spent enacting this park was on the scale of millions of dollars, and there are more obvious places that money could be spent, like infrastructure. Does that seem strange? I think it'll help if you think of the state of public opinion towards nature during the beginning of the 19th century. There was this idea of the Great American Wilderness, a land untamed by any person. So it makes sense that the people would want to preserve at least a part of that. It feeds into the idea of rugged America and rugged Americans. With that in mind, let's keep talking about Yellowstone National Park. Actually, not all government officials were convinced that conservation was worth the cost. But there was one person in particular that was the largest advocate for its creation. Ferdinand Hayden was a geologist and a person fascinated by nature and wildlife. He led several government surveys of the American land, including of the Yellowstone region. He was an immediate proponent for the creation of a national park there. It was only due to Hayden's advocacy that the Yellowstone National Park could be created at all. He was the one that convinced the doubtful government that 1, the nature of Yellowstone was worth preserving, and 2, that the will of the people was to create a national park there. So you see, it was the perseverance of one person that led to Yellowstone National Park's existence, or at least his perseverance more than anyone else's. Now, let's look at a similar situation. The Grand Canyon National Park is centered around the Grand Canyon in the state of Arizona. I assume that you've all heard of it. It's pretty well known. But not a lot of people know that initially there were efforts to put a huge dam on the Colorado River, which flows through the canyon. That dam probably would have been able to provide electricity for tens of thousands of people, and for a while it was nearly certain that it would be built. But then something happened. The President Theodore Roosevelt, visited the Grand Canyon in 1903 and was awed. When he reflected on the experience, he said something like, "Let this great wonder of nature remain as it now is. Do nothing to mar its grandeur, sublimity, and loveliness. You cannot improve on it." And on he went. After his visit, he immediately pushed the government to cancel plans for the dam and instead institute a national park there. His decision to prioritize nature over infrastructure was controversial, but it went through regardless. From then on, the Grand Canyon was practically untouchable. Other than the dam, numerous other proposals were made in order to capitalize on it, including many made by shipping companies that wanted to use the Colorado River. But most proposals were rejected for fear of marring the Grand Canyon's natural beauty. The majority of the public was pleased by Roosevelt's decision. He was seen as a strong president who did everything he could to protect the beauty of the American landscape, something that was important given the expansion of industry that was happening at the time. And I believe the public was pretty much right. As with Yellowstone, it was mostly due to the will and advocacy of one person that the Grand Canyon was preserved at all, and its existence today is basically that person's legacy. Imagine the amount of cooperation between these states necessary to keep Yellowstone preserved. And now think, the federal money that had to be spent enacting this park was on the scale of millions of dollars, and there are more obvious places that money could be spent, like infrastructure. Does that seem strange? Does that seem strange?